There's no secrets anymore. Seems like everybody knows. There's no lies left to expose. Well, I guess that's how it goes. All the bombs went up in smoke. All the stars and stripes in bold. All his stories Barry wrote. Well, I guess that's how it goes. 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 And I guess we'll never know. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. And I guess we'll never know. That's how it goes.
I guess we'll never know who blew the towers up. The real reason why our troops were rounded up. Lies printed in the paper and the articles. But man, I guess that's how their story goes. Shit, they wanna lie and tell you red is blue. Now they wanna act like up is down too. Anything to get you not to find the truth. I've been down this rabbit hole since I was only 22. I came back a Mason, now I'm claiming that I'm 33. The old me's dead and gone, so he could rest in peace. The same powers locked you up is gonna set you free. I ain't gotta say too much, you already know.
There's no secrets anymore. Seems like everybody knows. There's no lies left to expose. Well, I guess that's how it goes. All the bombs went up in smoke. All the stars and stripes in bold. All his stories Barry wrote. Well, I guess that's how it goes. 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 And I guess we'll never know. That's how it goes.
I guess we'll never know who built the pyramid. But the eye at the top is watching like the feds. So watch out what the fuck you say, I recommend. Or you'll end up like all of our dead presidents. Blow your top back in the streets, fucking JFK. Anything for order, so what's a couple casualties? Murder and it's slaughter, but everything we do for peace. Murder and it's slaughter, but that's just how you cattle sheep. Wake 'em up, I know they sleep. Wake 'em up, this ain't a dream. Six-headed beast coming straight for you and me. There's nowhere we can retreat, and you know it ain't a secret.
No secrets anymore. Seems like everybody knows. There's no lies left to expose. Well, I guess that's how it goes. All the bombs went up in smoke. All the stars and stripes in bold. All his stories Barry wrote. Well, I guess that's how it goes. 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 And I guess we'll never know. That's how
it is our duty as human beings, no matter what our political persuasion, our religious preference, race, or nationality, to raise one unified voice of protest, of indignation.
All right, welcome back to Bold Like a Leopard. We got our friend here, new guest, Nick Nittoli. Nick, I found you on YouTube. I was a little surprised you reached out, to be honest. I don't really do that many musical topics or anything like that. This is obviously not just music. I just wanted to ask, first of all, how'd you find Bold Like a Leopard or Razor Sharp Reports? And also, how you got into some of this political commentary and music.
Totally. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on. I really like your show. I found you in the depths of YouTube in the middle of the night, searching some conspiracy theories and some stuff about quinoa. And so I came across you. I figured it'd be a good interview to do. And I went ahead and reached out. As far as when I got into this stuff, I've been researching conspiracy theories for over 10 years now. I'm 33. I probably started off when I was around 22, 23. And it's always just been something that fascinated me. Anytime somebody tells you to look the other way, it definitely makes me want to look the way they're telling me not to look. So once I started unraveling, Egyptology and, Phoenicia, Cana, and all of these ancient civilizations, I realized that there was a lot more to the puzzle, and I just kind of went nose deep.
Yeah, and I think I always appreciate that type of curiosity because I started doing videos in, I think it was in 2015 or 26. It was 2016, and at the time they were already trying to close people off of this notion that YouTube is this avenue for free thought. And one of my first interviewees was a guy from BLM at the time, a local guy. Then there was a guy who was an actual bona fide neo-Nazi from Seattle. And I also had a guy who was what was called at the time the alt-right. He considered himself a white nationalist. And I personally, I never thought of it as strange for me to interview them, even though I'm Jewish. All those different categories, they certainly have issues, different issues with my religion. But I've always believed in a completely free media in the First Amendment, even for people who have incredibly, sometimes bizarre beliefs. That's why things like the Tiger King go so wild, because people do want to see things that are very extraordinary and decide for themselves what's true and what isn't. So obviously use the euphemism. We've decided to use the Quinoa Society. So do you consider yourself still a believer in the Quinoa Society notion of how events are going?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I gravitated to the quinoa movement was because I found that they were referring to conspiracies and theories that I had researched, almost a decade ago. They weren't talking about completely new ideas. They were talking about old ideas that I'd personally studied and I personally knew were true, kind of rehashed in this new amalgamation of conspiracy theories. So for me, it's like, when they're talking about JFK and they're talking about 9/11 and they're talking about reptilian aliens and they're talking about underground military bases, I know that that's factual stuff. So therefore, I could care less what they're calling it or what the latest name for it is. I'm really just researching and a believer in the truth that I've personally invested my time into and that I know is true. So to answer your question in short, yes.
Yeah, and that's why I think this whole wave of censorship against it is so ridiculous. I was going to use a different word that starts with R, but the problem is, I'd probably bet, I haven't looked into you too deep, but probably 80% of some of the things that you've talked about, I don't really agree with. Some of the stuff about Kennedy, I probably would, but they're trying to make it out to be this huge danger to society when. When I was a kid, I read this book called The Assassination Chain. It tried to make the case that all the assassinations of the 60s were orchestrated by Howard Hughes. And it was interesting. And at the time, I was maybe 13 years old. I was like, yeah, this is pretty awesome if this actually happened. Not awesome that I obviously don't want, some of these people to die. Right. But, like this sounds like really interesting. And then over time, I read some other books and, some of my beliefs changed, but I still don't believe what the Warren Commission said. I don't believe in some of the, some of the official stuff concerning the Malcolm X assassination. And later, I grew up going to high school when 9/11 happened. I started to realize there were gaps in what happened. I don't necessarily believe every single theory that's thrown out about it, but I think people should be allowed to make that decision, and that's why I appreciate having free media out there. And I don't know if you're on alternative media or alt tech yet, if you have BitChute or Rumble, but I'd recommend you do it because they're having all sorts of people go on there. Both people, conventional thoughts, like, for example, Alan Dershowitz, who probably is in some of the stuff that you talk about, not for the most flattering reasons. And then there's I actually saw David Duke was on there today. I was like, what? So
interesting.
I think it's fine to have both of them, even if I don't like one of them and the other one I agree with. So,
sure.
About your music career. So have you received like pressure from friends and family sort of to like ignore your beliefs and stay away from that type of stuff and focus more on some of your core talents that are, for lack of a better term, acceptable with society?
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to get me to not focus on this stuff before I was putting it into my music. So it never stopped me then, and it's not going to stop me now. So the people around me, for the most part, I try to keep a tight circle of people that are believers, that understand what's going on in this country, and that are patriots. But I also have family members and people, that are lifelong friends that are just not into this stuff. They definitely tried to dissuade me, but I think that the passion that I've shown towards it and the consistency that I've shown towards it has kind of gotten them to not only ease up, but to kind of pry open, Pandora's box a little bit and to look into things themselves, which is my mission at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's that type of attitude that would be more helpful if people realized how many individuals around them they might belong to a church that might have unusual beliefs. Remember, there was Christian Science that for many years they don't believe in blood transfusions or other medical interventions and things like that. And I understand there's always risks to certain beliefs people hold, but the reason the country was founded was because a lot of the people who came here couldn't be accepted for those beliefs back in Britain, where our society starts with. More to the point, though. So there's obviously been a few snags in the whole concept of where the Queue-A-Nun Society said the election is going to go, or how events would unravel. We do see that Biden has been inaugurated as president. I think a lot of the stuff that was hidden about him before the campaign, now they're having to acknowledge it, grudgingly. But as far as your mindset, has anything changed since November or since January?
You know, a little bit of lack of faith in the quinoa's presence on big mainstream media. For instance, I feel that there's a million conspiracy theories that are not getting anywhere as close to the amount of press coverage as the Quinoa Society. So for me, a red flag has already been raised, thinking that perhaps there's some form of psyop involved with the Quinoa Society and the beliefs that were, the election and all that stuff not happening has only furthered my belief that this might be a bit of a psyop, but mixed with truth. I mean, any good psyop has to be mixed with truth. But it definitely raised the flag that perhaps this is a form of a psyop, or that there's some truth and that there's some psyop, etc. But for sure, I've definitely doubted what's going on right now based on the fact that a lot of their fruitions did not come true.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the troubles that I had after November. I mean, I was, obviously I was not happy. I am personally, I'm a non-interventionist. I supported the Ron Paul campaign in the past. I think Biden is going to lead us to war. And it was hard to watch the news and decide what to comment on and what not to. And I finally started to say, unless I have researched something and published it, like I write for a magazine, American Greatness, fairly regularly. And what I try to do, I try to focus on stuff that I've researched personally, as opposed to, the things that other people, stories that they promote that I can't attest to. But eventually, there were people who were telling me that on January 6th, everything would be revealed. There would be some of these secret constitutional powers revealed that would reverse the entire election. Personally, my faith was eroded by the Supreme Court. I thought the Supreme Court could help to at least litigate what actually happened, if not get the result that I wanted.
Sure.
What do you think was the crucial turning point after the election that led to this point where, there's just this total divide in terms of what people believe, depending on what station they listen to?
Yeah, I mean, it scares me, to be honest with you, because I feel like at the end of the day, if there is a dark power behind all of this that's just trying to get us to be divided and conquered, we're doing a damn good job of helping it by completely falling for anything that comes off the mainstream news media and pitting ourselves against each other with the race war and kind of, the whole reform the police movement, that whole thing where people were just acting completely atrocious towards police officers and men in blue. I think all of that is the dynamic for, total takeover, for them to be able to say, you guys are acting insane. We need to throw the shackles on, etc. I feel like it's we're moving towards slavery unless we can kind of come together, realize that there's only one race, and that's the human race, and not let a media or a dark power behind the media divide us. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree anymore because there's just such this, like, I think the past 5 years it's shown that there's this diversity of people. There's a lot of Hispanics I know, for example, that they're very skeptical of all of this propaganda about race, about obviously the health propaganda, which
Sure.
I don't want to use too many code words that YouTube hates, about the censorship. There's a lot of people that I know who are, of all sorts of backgrounds. And then there's this, like, lately, just this demonization of culture, right? The cancel culture itself is canceling culture, right? With the books and Curious George and things like that. And while it might not be one higher dark power that's doing it, it certainly is out of control. Whatever is going on, there doesn't seem a way of stopping it.
Agreed.
I think that what you do in terms of music, whether you consider it comedy or whether you actually consider it completely serious social commentary, I think that's the best way to change people's minds, because after all, some of the most significant gains for the movements in the 60s were through either R&B music or folk music like Bob Dylan, and then you could go later, there were similar things with punk rock, and then later with hip hop. How is it a challenge for you as a musician and performer, besides the lockdowns and things like that, in order to get your stuff across to new audiences?
Well, they definitely started like shadow banning me on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that once they got, wind of the kind of stuff that I was talking about and the material that I was providing in my music and music videos. But for me, I mean, I've always just been a guy who, kind of works, single-handedly when it comes to getting my music out there. And like, I got myself signed to Warner. Like, Warner didn't knock on my front door and say, we want to sign you to a 5-year publishing deal. I leveraged myself into that situation. So for me, it's like, I'm always, my success has always been contingent on me and my effort and my work ethic, which has always been at 150. So for me, it's hard because they are really putting down the clampers when it comes to the censorship. But I think that only helps my message, if that makes sense. I think that when people see that they're scared of what we're going to say and that you and I can't get on and we have to use a code word like quinoa, I think that that's very, very apparent to the listener and a very apparent to people who have brain cells inside of their head to see that something is going on and that they're only hurting themselves is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and this was something that came up in the summer that I found was very interesting concerning Ice Cube. And to be clear, I mean, I think what Ice Cube was saying was ridiculous, but then there was this like weird reaction where people were like, he's saying it's wrong. He's saying stuff that's wrong, but I'm afraid to say he's wrong because of who he is. And also, but the truth is, with all the condemnation of Ice Cube and he's had a career of saying very defamatory stuff that is anti-Semitic. What was the best way to react to it? A person reached out. They had a phone conversation. It was a private phone conversation with him. Said, "Look, I come from the same background as you, but I'm Jewish. You're obviously from LA. I grew up on the East Coast." People have to use dialogue in order to actually, bridge gaps in terms of society. So Ice Cube, who I think was always very talented, was always very vocal about some of his political beliefs, obviously about his sports interests and stuff like that. It doesn't really help society to make that into a taboo. Like you can't listen to an Ice Cube album because he's a hateful bigot or whatever. In my opinion, even people who are hateful bigots who have interesting talents, I think sometimes it's valuable to preserve that, make it into something to study or critique, and then people are free to do it. That's what happened when there were the movies like Dogma and what was the
Sure.
other one? Passion of the Christ in the 2000s. People were
Yeah.
calling for censoring them, and I said, look, I mean, the movie's going to succeed if you try to censor it, right? And that's exactly what happened to both of those movies.
Yep.
Um, in terms of, do you try to work with other performers that might be of the opposite persuasion as you in terms of politics?
No, definitely not. I try to keep the music as separate as I can from as far as like working with other artists, because I only work with other artists when I'm either songwriting or producing for them. As far as my artist project, it's only Nick Nittoli. There's no features. It's always me singing and rapping on the track, etc. So when it comes to that, I just try to, I try to just make good money and make good business, make good songs.
And are you encouraged? There's been this outpouring of new interest in alternative entertainment, like people such as Gina Carano. Tom McDonald is now actually growing pretty huge in terms of his following. Their country music, I think there's going to be a rebellion against the fake country music, the people like Taylor Swift and Keith Urban. There's going to be like people trying to return to a more distilled version of it. How long do you think it'll happen before that'll actually be like a force to be reckoned with, or is it already happening?
I mean, when it comes to country music in particular, I think that a lot of people are gravitating more towards real country as opposed to country pop. And I personally know some country artists that are just, moving so fast right now and upwards. And I think it's a testament to how real they are. And some of these country artists are talking about some conspiracy theory topics in their music, which is, I think, gravitating to a lot of people, rightfully so.
Yeah, and like this is something that I found like hilarious, that there's all this focus. For example, David Icke, who I haven't looked at very much, but people are behaving as if he's going to lead to some sort of genocide when in the end he's a guy who's he's elderly. He played soccer for a long time. He talks about lizard people, and if you don't believe in lizard people, um, what's the harm done? I mean, are people
Sure.
actually trying to tear people's skin off and see if they're a lizard inside? That's
Right.
that's really my attitude. Now, on the flip side, if he's right, society would be, we're kind of screwed as the world. But there's all this stuff that they're doing for real now with Klaus Schwab and Anthony Fauci, just believing that because he can get on TV, he can dictate to people what to do. Bill Gates suddenly shows up with his stupid sweater, and he can go, say, are you watching the show? Have you gotten the vaccine yet? Because you can't watch
Right.
without the vaccine. It's just like
Right.
ridiculous. Like they're literally putting out their dictatorial ambitions in front of you, and I don't understand how there's this aversion to having even people who have other crazy ideas, come out and say whatever they want. People who are I don't know if you remember this. There was a trend called breatharianism, which was kind of a joke on the radio, where this woman said that she could survive without food and water, and then it was proven to be wrong, so people moved away from it. So just let the world take its own course. I don't understand where the media has to be the nanny for all of humanity.
Yeah, I think they give themselves away when they start to censor stuff because they're only censoring stuff that I'm sure, know is true. So if it wasn't true and if there was no logical, if it was a complete logical fallacy, then why are you censoring it? Why isn't David Icke on CNN or BBC anymore? Why? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just very obvious that they're censoring to protect the truth.
In fact, I think it's the worst censorship we've ever seen, because when I was a kid, there was the Springer show. He would have people on who were Klansmen. He would have people on who
Right.
were also. all sorts of like exotic characters. Some of them probably actors, and nobody, surprised, nobody became a Klansman because they saw Klansman on the Jerry Springer show. Now they behave as if, let's say, you emailed a Klansman, or if you passed by a Klansman's restaurant, that you've gotten the scarlet letter. So
Right.
has that happened, that in your either professional or personal life, people are telling you something that, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because you talked to this other person?
Well, yeah, I mean, people originally thought that I was in a gang. You know, I started getting phone calls after the BBC article or interview, and then people were like, "What? I didn't know you were in a gang." And I was like, "Me neither," because I'm not in a gang. So, you know, when it comes to the quinoa thing, it really gets everybody riled up, and a lot of people have misconceptions and have accused me of some really wild stuff that I'm not involved in. You know, I'm just a researcher, man. I just hop on YouTube or whatever the social platform is and just research what I think is going on and try to decipher it using my God-given brain. And, you know, and then eventually I might have some commentary on it, and I'll use my social platforms for that, or my music videos to express it. You know, a lot of what I'm doing is to get out 10 years of loneliness and 10 years of being called a kook and 10 years of, you know, researching some really dark, nefarious stuff and not really having that many people to talk about it with. You know, my music has always been therapy for me, and that goes for my music videos as well. You know, some of the time I'm just trying to get out some demons or some dark, you know, imagery out of my mind, so it's not in there anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, we've both I mean, you obviously agree more with Kindle Society. I don't really agree with them, but let's say 5% of what they've talked about, there's some substance to it. Like happened this weekend with Doug Band, apparently flipping on the Clintons. It's that's like a real problem, because there have been so many denials for so many years, and people have been saying, "Oh, this is dangerous." They're talking about this. The president shouldn't be defamed this way. Only President Clinton, they say, that shouldn't be defamed. They never say it about some of the other presidents.
Right.
But and then there's never an apology given to you. There's never apology. By the way, I've made some of, I've talked about other allegations that aren't covered, such as the Kevin Ives murder, if you've heard of that. That happened in Arkansas. Well, that's exactly the issue, that people talk about the Clinton body count as being some sort of myth. But, there's people who back in Arkansas 30, 40 years ago, they died very mysterious deaths right around the Iran-Contra period, and the Clintons are connected to it. They've covered it up. They've made all sorts of attempts to let those sleeping dogs lie. And whatever the excuse is, it's never justified when something like, the guy whose initials are SR, who was murdered after the 2016 election, who I can't say his name on YouTube. You remember the guy from the DNC?
Yes.
So suddenly, instead of saying, okay, people can have their ideas about how this murder occurred, they say an unsolved murder, any discussion of it on YouTube is some sort of conspiracy theory and it has to be policed. That's really the problem that I have with it. I don't care if the label is Quinoa Society. I don't care if the label has to do with, Hamburger Helper or whatever. If we called ourselves all the Hamburger Helper crew or something.
Sure.
I think that if people want to tune it out, they have plenty of other YouTube channels they could go on PewDiePie's channel and just watch gaming, which they're going after too. So, I think we're kind of on the same page as far as that. So I think we'll go with one last question. So what do you think is the belief that you hold that gets people most, it's like the most provocative thing? People say, how can you possibly say that?
Yeah, it's so funny because it would be my last guess, because I'm talking about Clinton body count in my music videos. I'm talking about 9/11 being an inside job. I'm talking about all of our roots going back to Freemasonry and Egyptology and Egypt. And the thing that gets them the most riled up out of all of that is that Trump is coming to save the world and free a bunch of children from child sex trafficking rings that are in deep underground military bases.
So yeah, I mean, I don't, I mean, I kind of don't believe it, but I mean, I think he did a lot of work as far as that. That's undoubtedly he did a lot of work to fight.
Sure.
sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, and you know, he should get the Chris Hansen Award if it exists, as far as
I
that.
agree.
But I would also say, you know, adding to that, you know, the rapper Jadakiss talked about 9/11 being an inside job. Bill O'Reilly was calling him to be banned for years, and
Yeah.
what did in Jadakiss's career? I think he just got a little old and people stopped listening to him. So
Yeah, I agree.
people are so bent out of shape about, you know, eccentric beliefs being expressed out there. You know, I don't really think it does people harm unless you actually make an imminent threat to someone else, right? That's really the only, that's like the baseline. And I don't see that threat coming from most people in the Kinwa society. There's maybe like a few people that have, you know, there have been cases, and the media has beaten that horse to the ground and beyond. Anyway, as we wrap up, where do you think, well, first of all, where can people reach you, and where can they see your work?
Yeah, all of my social media would be at Nick, Nick, Nittoli, Nittoli. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. And you can find my music most easily on YouTube at Nick Nittoli. And yeah, hop on there, subscribe, like, share it with your friends. Check it out.
And what track do you think would be the one that people should check out?
For your listeners, I would say either Gun Dem Down, which is an anti-Biden song, or How It Goes, which is a anti-Clinton song.
I think How It Goes might be the one that played us in. So
yeah.
Let me see if I can find Gun Dem Down.
It's GUN space DEM and then space down. Gun Dem Down.
Okay. Hold on. See. Okay, here we go. It actually came right up. So awesome. Let me just pop it up. So anything else you want to say before I have the video play us out?
No, man, I really appreciate you having me on. And I think that we really both agree in that human beings shouldn't be censored, regardless of what they're saying. We're, as Americans and patriots, we're here to be able to have freedom of speech. And that's something that's being ripped away. And I feel like, you know, we're both boots on the ground and trying to help that. And I'm proud to be a part of that. Yeah,
better to be a boot on the ground in the war against censorship than in the war in the Middle East. Yeah. So with that being said, I hope to, you know, maybe in the future, I want to be able to send you some ideas for, you know, different, like I think more in terms of comedy, but I'll try to do some lyrics.
Please do.
Yeah. And here is Gun Dem Down by Nick Nittoli. I will put the channel link in the description, and have a great night.
You too, man.
Running now. They're running now. They're running now. Cause I gunned them down. I gunned them down. I gunned them down. You don't come around. You don't come around. I gunned them down. This is the new generation song. This is that running formation song. This is that home of the bravest song. This is that cover up, no explanation song. This is that CIA agent song. This is that new education song. This is that new legislation song. This is the music that people get taken from. This is the music that Reagan fought. This is the new federation song. This is that hidden file, exposed, classified documentation song. This is that new regulation song. This is the heart of a nation on them. This is why they want on the guns. This is why they're scared of the whole population. They running now. Yeah. They're running now. Yeah. They're running now. Yeah. Cause I gunned them down. I gunned them down. Okay. I gunned them down. Yeah. You don't come around. You don't come around. No. I gunned them down. Yeah. So this is the shit y'all been waiting for. This is the shit they'll detain you for. This what they collect the data for. This is the music that got y'all debating more. This what they sit at the tables for. This what the fuck do you take me for? This what they linked up with Satan for. This is that fuck up your whole operation song. This is that new motivation song. This is that new inspiration song. This is that gather your troops, your armies, your fleets to stop corporation song. This is that hope that you take me wrong. This is that ramification song. This is that Charlton boy from out the hands is where I can take it from. I gun them down. I gun them down. I gun them down. You don't come around. You don't come around. Cause I gun them down. I gun them down. I gun them down. You don't come around. You don't come around. Cause I gun them down. I gun them down. I gun them down. You don't come around. You don't come around.
For I am the truth. I am the light that lighteth every man and woman that cometh into this continent, into this world of America today. I am that light. He controls all the newspapers and the televisions.